Greetings, everybody. My name is Ravi. Today, I'm going to be sharing some thoughts of mine, which I put together as part of my Altered initiative. Altered, the primary focus is to try and share knowledge related to applied skills, applied thinking, applied communications, which I believe are the basic foundations which helps every human being succeed in whatever they set out to do, whether it is in life, in our careers, in managing our families, whatever the situation may be. I feel these are the basic foundations. And so since 2019, when I began Altered as an initiative in a very formal manner, I use a lot of the material that I put together to talk to preteens, people still in college, or young working professionals, and even people who are in their 50s. And this material that I'm going to share with you today is not from any textbook or not based on some elaborate studies done by people. They're all based on my observations. I am now 54 years old. And one of the passions that I've had since early childhood has been to observe and learn, from people. I may not necessarily ask a lot of questions to a lot of people, but I've always spent time observing them, going about their daily lives. Sometimes these are people that I've never known before. It could be, just people, random people in a crowd, whatever may be the situation. I found people interesting, and I continue to find people interesting. So what is it that I've been observing and studying? I've been basically looking at patterns, and I'm trying to see whether a lot of things that I've heard people around me talk about, like, unfortunately this happened, or I was so lucky that this event took place, or I was so lucky that this opportunity suddenly fell on my lap. Somehow I don't believe that luck has as much of a role to play as a lot of us give credit to luck, if I may say so. I believe that a lot of it has to do with our actions or inactions. And so what I've done is I've tried to look at various factors that actually impact us from the time when we are born, and as we keep growing older, up to, let's say, 80, 85, 90, and let's not keep score after that, right? And I've tried to call this entire journey as the journey of life. And I decided to break it up into 10 stages based on age. And I believe, from my observations till date, and I continue to learn, that there are certain patterns, there are certain key parameters that kind of are common across most of us. And these common parameters impact in the way we grow up, in the way our character gets shaped. So without much ado, let me take you through a set of slides I have. Since there's 10 stages, you can expect 10 plus maybe one more slide. So sit back. I have my glass of juice. You can pick up whatever you want, maybe a snack. I would encourage that you watch this. If you have your family around you, get a time slot where everybody is available. Sit and watch and discuss what I'm trying to say here amongst yourselves. Maybe pause the slides, have a discussion amongst yourself, and then continue the presentation, whatever suits you. I must say that there could be plus or minus sort of deviations on a case-to-case basis. But as we come across those situations in the slides, I will talk to you about it. Okay, so here goes. So the first slide here that you see, which is, let me explain the structure of the slides. All the slides look similar except for the content. You will see the arrow at the top, which is indication of our age as we grow older. So you see on the extreme left, it starts with nothing to 4. That's the age from birth up to when we are 4 years old. And then there's another stage which is 4 to 12, which I consider important. 12 to 18, 18 to 22, and so on, right? And so this first slide talks about a few points here. I think for most people, it is the birth to preschool stage. That's the stage when 99% of young kids are pampered. The kid cries, and then there's a bunch of people coming in, asking why is the kid crying? Maybe it's hungry, maybe it just was fed but it's still crying, so let's bring out some toys and entertain it. You get pampered. At this stage, as is expected, people are totally dependent on somebody else for everything. All mistakes are excused. You take maybe the baby drops something from the edge of the bed, and something breaks, or anything that the baby does, no worries. In fact, somebody else will get asked as to why that object was kept there, not the baby. Similarly, if it's a 3-year-old who grabs a pencil or a pen, decides to show its artistic capabilities on the wall, usually it's not the child that gets the scoldings, it is the person who left the pencil there. So that's what I mean by all mistakes are excused. There's no expectations from people around except for, is this child eating on time, right? That itself is a big ask. So that's when you see if the child doesn't eat, then you have a grandmom coming and singing a song, or the mom is singing a song, or the dad is doing a dance. All these things happen. I would like to add, like when I share this slide with some of the young children, I also tell them that this birth to preschool, for example, the exceptions to this could be, there are still a lot of people out there in the world who are not blessed with the opportunity to go to school, right? So we must remember that if we are the fortunate few who are able to get decent education and stuff, then that's how it is. So that's the first instance where I'm talking about some of these points may be okay for a certain set of people, but you can always find a certain set of people where some of these points may not apply. So let's be sensitive to that. So let me move on to the next slide, which is the situation when somebody is in the age group of 4 to 12. Obviously, this is early to mid-school phase. People are less pampered. And I ask, when I talk to my students, who was typically the preteens, and ask them, do you notice this in your families? And they say, yeah, I don't know why, but it's obvious, right? If one continues to get pampered at this stage, and that's the starting point for somebody getting on that aggressive, arrogant streak, expectation that anything that I'm going to ask for, I'm going to get. And we all know that this can happen only up to a certain point in time. Beyond that, the world is not going to forgive us, right? So again, if we are those parents who believe in doing everything for our kids, and sometimes giving them stuff even before they ask for it, I think it'd be useful for us to keep in mind the adverse effect of this. So the sooner the young minds get molded, the better. I think that's pretty obvious. I have 2 kids of my own. So apart from the fact that I said I'm 54, my background is I spent most of my life growing up in Bangalore, come from a typical middle class family. I'm the eldest of 3 children. My younger brother is 5 years junior to me, and then below him is our little sister. I say little, but she's in her late 40s already. And we all have kids. My mom is no more, but my dad is around. He's 84, 85. So, I spent about 20 years working as an IT professional, and then I quit to focus on certain other passions, which maybe I will talk about later, or you can look it up. So let's continue with this. We still are in this age group 4 to 12 highly dependent, right? Including even up to 5, 6, maybe 7 years. Even the bath is given by some elderly person in the house until we slowly start becoming independent. And we are expected to become independent too, right? Because obviously, just like in the case of getting pampered, forever, if somebody is going to keep spoon feeding us and helping us with everything that otherwise we should have become independent in, we pay the price for it much later. I'm going to share some interesting anecdotes as we go along. Some mistakes are excused. The same thing. If the pampering reduces, then obviously we expect that I've been guiding you for such a long time. You better know that drawing on the wall is a no-no now, right? So expectations from the environment now suddenly have taken importance. We see obedience. People expect us to be disciplined. There is a lot of emphasis on hygiene, studies. Now, I must remind you again, I said that these thoughts were put together in 2019, which is before anybody had a clue about the pandemic. At the time of producing this video, today in fact is the 29th of December 2020, and I think across the world we've learned the importance of hygiene. If we didn't respect this term hygiene before March or before February of this year, I'm pretty sure every person in every nook and corner of the world understands why hygiene is important. So to some degree, we would say that there have been a lot of learnings because of the pandemic, but I'm sorry to say that we still find people who still haven't got it, right? So we can't do anything much about that. Obedience, discipline, and straightforward, there's a difference. In fact, many of the youngsters that I talk to, when I ask them what is discipline, they immediately talk about, they give me examples of what would come under obedience. So discipline is, according to me, more about following processes, which helps us become more efficient. It could even be simply like, us driving on the road, and there is something called discipline while driving, right? Switching on the indicators, following the lane, all of this comes under discipline. Perhaps the one profession where a lot of emphasis is given to discipline as part of the onboarding would be, let's say, if one were to get into the armed forces. I have not seen any other profession where, and perhaps maybe in the in the medical domain, I'm sure doctors too have to maintain a lot of discipline when it comes to before entering the operation theater or any of these environments. So hygiene, discipline, we need to get it into us that discipline is way beyond just being submissive or obeying blindly. If we understand the true meaning behind why we need to follow discipline, I think we will not find it a pain point. Studies, of course, yes, this age group understands the importance of that. 12 to 18. This is a fairly crucial phase in our life, I believe. It's been different. Say 25 years ago, 12 to 18 typically looked like what, not much of a difference. Today, 12 to 18 seems a lot different because I would say to some extent it is the internet, basically the digital era has opened up a lot of things a little early in terms of information. It's good, and sometimes it is a bit of a worry, because information is like a double-edged sword. It can cut both ways. It's useful, and at the same time it can cause harm. That's what I believe in. Let's start from the top. Yeah, this is the phase when most people are in high school, and mostly not pampered. I would say hopefully not pampered, for obvious reasons. I recall reading or hearing about this interesting story where, somewhere in North India, there was a 21-year-old who was gifted a brand new, imported car for his 21st birthday. And this person, you wouldn't imagine it, but apparently he decided to take it and dump it in a lake. And because he felt it was too small for him and his friends to move around. Now, a 21-year-old dumping an brand new imported car because it was not big enough for him and his friends. Now, that says a lot. So obviously that was a case where the pampering hadn't stopped. And so this person, the word I would like to place in front of you is entitlement. And if you are a working professional, if you are interviewing people, or if you have already got people in your teams where you come across a very heavy or high sense of entitlement, you know where it all started. The pampering which started, up to the age of 4, probably never stopped. And that's the result. So if we are parents, I think we should ask whether we want our kids to grow up and finally, take up jobs in environments where they are then going to be told by somebody else that they're not fit or they're not great team players. We need to act now. If we are already being given feedback that we are showing signs of entitlement, then it's good to introspect and see whether we need to change. So that's food for thought, I would say. Hopefully people are less dependent. 12 to 18, they take care of most of their needs. They are beginning to take some decisions on their own. Serious mistakes, as we know, are impactful. And then the rest you can read. I just want to highlight this one new expectation that's cropped up, that you see, some social skills. So, social skills, for many it might be obvious, but if you are a young person and not sure what I'm talking about, let me elaborate. It's not about just speaking to people freely, starting off conversations, and those kind of aspects. A lot of times, it's also about knowing when not to speak. It's also about knowing when to share the information that needs to be shared. When should I not share the kind of information? So, for example, what's going on in our houses, right? If I'm a young kid of age of 12, 13, and I'm outside playing, obviously as parents, we would guide them to, not talk about everything that goes on in a house, or everything that gets discussed should not be just, very, very transparently shared. It's not about keeping secrets, but it's more like on need basis only we need to be sharing information. Apart from that, of course, it's about showing the social skills to interact intelligently in a nice manner with people, maybe guests coming home. A lot of times today, people do live in large houses with each occupant having a room to themselves. And there can be situations when, let's say, an uncle, aunt, or grandparents are visiting, and the kids are kind of, they're shut in their own rooms and doing their own thing and hardly step out and interact. And it's probably a good idea to encourage, or rather discourage that kind of behavior early on, because it shouldn't be like our relationships are to be only based on a transactional kind of a nature, meaning like if I don't need anything from somebody, then there's no need for me to talk to them. No, so there's a lot that can go into this space. So extracurricular, 12 to 8, see, until the age of 12, people play, they get, they see somebody playing hockey, they want to play hockey. They see somebody playing soccer, they want to play soccer. So interests can be very diverse. In many cases, you've still not been able to spot the talent in these young ones. But 12 to 18, you kind of get a feel. Yeah, I think my kid is showing a lot of interest and ability to play tennis or swimming or whatever it may be. And this is the stage when we as parents tend to invest, in the extracurricular activities. Schools too encourage that. So if there's somebody who is showing a lot of talent and potential in a certain sport, then even schools encourage that. We need to recognize this. I'm going to come to this point in a minute. This 12 to 18 is when, if you are getting those opportunities to hone your skills and develop in that space, I think it's important for us to utilize the time well. Like I teach guitar as well, right? Number of students. And I can understand when they tell me that I couldn't practice, sir, because I was preparing for exams. I couldn't practice, sir, because of something. But I know that when holidays come, right, they're again not practicing. Now, what makes me sad is when there was no time, that was the excuse. But now time is there, but they're not utilizing it. Trust me, after 18, you're going to see time becoming extremely scarce for a number of reasons. I'll come to that. Character shaping begins. This is just yesterday. I was sharing this slide with a bunch of preteens, and there was one ninth grader who came up with a nice definition for character. I wanted to know what their understanding of the word character itself was. And what she said was interesting, which is what clothes we wear and how we appear, it creates the perception to the world outside about who we are from the outside. Whereas character is the picture of who we are from the inside. I think that was a pretty nice way of putting it, and I liked how this ninth grader thought. So that's what it is. So other definitions could be, it defines who we are based on our behavior, based on the way we respond or react to situations, and so on and so forth. So if you've understood this, the point here is, see, up to 12, we haven't developed enough for us to be able to make sense out of a lot of inputs coming our way. But 12, 13, 14, slowly we are developing, and we can start figuring out what's good, what's not so good. And how we deal with these inputs coming to us. It can be coming to us from our parents, teachers in schools, uncles, aunts, people, well-wishers, right? The way we respond to these inputs that come to us contributes towards building our character. That's the point here. External influences are quite high because 12 to 18, obviously, we are spending a lot of time outside our houses. We are going to schools. Sometimes we go on excursion with our, friends and classmates. So external influences, what we see outside, those can influence us positively, can influence us negatively as well. So we need to be aware of that. Moving on, 18 to 22. Typically for most, it's college education. I know that in certain countries and certain families, education can get truncated because of financial reasons. Maybe the family is in some hardship. There's pressure on people to discontinue their education after 10th or 12th and take up, a job. Many people, become cab drivers, for example, right? You can see that because 18 is typically when you get to that age where you get a license to vote, you get the license to drive, a lot of things happen. So let's assume that this is a case where, somebody is fortunate enough to continue with education and, they're expected to be independent except financially because you still need your, outside support. Expectations from the environment by and large remain the same, discipline, hygiene, so on and so forth. Extracurricular sometimes takes a backseat. Right? So it's important for us to realize that. That's what I meant in the previous slide when I was talking about 12 to 18, when you get the time and opportunity to focus on things outside of academics. Remember that 18 on, even if you are extremely talented, even if you are extremely interested, you may or may not get the opportunity to, focus full time on that because you are balancing on the one side your academic expectations and this. Unless you are so very talented and you can afford to let academics take the secondary role, play the secondary role, or take a back seat, and you give entire emphasis on your. So you are taking a chance there. But in many instances, you can take a calculated, I must say, risk, right? Because I know so many people who are aspiring cricket players. While it is wonderful, we must realize that ultimately, if you want to reach the top, there's probably only 11 people who get a chance to represent the country. Maybe you get to play a lot of other, club cricket and maybe some other tournaments, but not everybody gets a chance. And trust me, it's not just skill, talent, and ability alone that ensures success. Unfortunately, we do live in a world where, apart from all this, we need to be at the right place at the right time. Your network, how good that network is, also matters. And you need support. You need that support to make things happen. Otherwise, there are many talented people who you don't get to hear about them, right? So I'm not here to discuss or go deeper into that particular area, but we need to face reality. We cannot just fight it, right? So character shaping continues. Remember, it started, we started paying attention to it, sometime in the earlier slide. It's going to continue. External influences, very high. This is the stage when, a lot of kids probably are staying away from parents for the first time. You're staying in a hostel, or you decided to rent a house and stay on your own. You're doing your engineering or medicine or whatever it may be. I mean, even in our environment here in India, there are a number of cases where people decide to go outside of India and study. And I'm sure that's happening in a number of other countries too. So these are all situations where what we see, what we observe, what we learn from the outside world will influence us. Some of these influences, I repeat, could be good for us in the long term. Some may not be good for us in the long term. A lot depends on what inputs we have received up to this stage, how we have received them and processed them and accepted them, and how we have helped or allowed those inputs to shape our value system. That will help us take the decisions at this stage. So we need to be really aware and conscious. One thing I must say is, if that level of trust and openness and transparency between people of this age and their parents or well-wishers, if that foundation of trust has been built well, most of the time things are fine. Because if we are exposed to things which we are not sure of, if we are very comfortable in taking up this topic and discussing with people that probably know more about it, we probably are okay in those situations. But if we don't have somebody that we can talk to, use as a sounding board, then we can have some difficulties in dealing with the situations. We are taking own decisions. I just mentioned about, a lot of people in this age group staying away. You can't at that time suddenly realize that I'm staying in a rented house. It was when everything was going fine, it's okay. But now suddenly, you have to take a decision, and your parents are not anywhere nearby for you to talk to, or probably they don't have the context. So it's important that we start learning how to take decisions early on, not be afraid of taking decisions. Not all decisions are going to work out well. Some will work out fine, some may fall through the cracks, but that's the point here. So we now get into the slide which shows us the key points for us to consider when you are of the age group of 22 to 30. As you can see, I just want to highlight some of the key points here. Many people are in their first or second job in most cases. I'm not talking about those who decide to do higher studies, take up a PhD, continue their academics, whatever, right? I'm talking about most people, first or second, because sometimes you are on a job and within 6 months you realize that you're not happy, you may have to switch. A lot of things happen in today's world. Many people are becoming financially independent for the first time, right? Obviously, if you have your job, you're earning, and it means a lot of things, right? When money is your money. And, they could start buying large assets. There's some people who always want, at this point in time, I'm using the word assets loosely, not from an accounting perspective. So, there are times when people look upon a car as an asset, right? I consider a car as a liability. It's just a tool for us to get from point A to point B, but it keeps draining my resources. So, but let's leave it at that. A house, maybe somebody always wanted to have their own house. They don't believe in paying rent. I'd rather pay an EMI. Could be that. Some are beginning to invest. It could be in stock market, or they could be opening up some term deposits in a bank, whatever. Some could be heavily spending. That's because you always wanted to buy stuff, but you held yourself back because until now it was your parents' money. In some cases, you don't hold yourself back even in that situation. But here, when it's your own money, you're not answerable to anybody, right? So, and there's enough stuff out there for us to spend the money on. I'm not getting into that list right here. I must tell you this incident. 96, 97 is when I had my first opportunity to travel outside of India on work. And with me was a young engineer. And I remember having a chat with him. He had already been on a job for about 3 years. So we were just talking about stuff. And at some point in time, I was asking him, you are probably getting ready to settle down in life. So what are your thoughts about, buying a house and stuff? And he said, yeah, that'll take a long time because, when I boarded this aircraft, the savings in my account were like 400 rupees. And I was like shocked. He's been working for 3 years and I thought he had been, maybe helping his parents out or some form, but it turned out, no, all that was not the case. He was literally blowing up the money that was coming. So that's not changed. This is 96, 97, but today we have more opportunities to blow up money. This is again an instance where, the pandemic probably has really shown the importance of saving money to a lot of people who otherwise I don't think would have ever learned. It's always, we talk about, spending 10 rupees is easy. Earning the 10 rupees, is slightly more difficult. It's like that. It's not about just saving for the sake of saving. It's about figuring out what we require, how much we require, thinking a bit long term. That's the point here. The bigger point here is I'm not trying to tell people how they should lead their lives. All I'm trying to say here is 20 to 30 is when you have when you are beginning to make your own money. It is up to you to figure out how you're going to spend it. Are you going to keep some for a longer term, for the rainy day as we speak, or are you going to blow everything up? That's a call you need to take. But we need to remember one thing. This flow of income is not going to be forever. 20 to 30, when we start working, we can say our productive career is probably another 30, 35 years. So it's those 30, 35 years that whatever we earn, that needs to keep us going for the rest of our lives, including the fact that we are not spending all this only on ourselves. We are going to get into a family situation and then there's going to be other expenses and so on. So that's something we need to keep in mind from day one. Yes, the other points are all self-explanatory, so I'm not getting into that. Let me see, character shaping continues. It does, right? A lot of times we feel 22, 25, the person is mature. See, maturity comes through exposure to different situations. So a lot matters on how much exposure you have received, How many situations came your way, but you decided to run away from those tough situations, right? So, a lot matters there. This is when we start to see a 29-year-old going to a 22-year-old for advice. Can happen. That's depends on who learned more after this. External influences, I put it as moderate, because by then we are kind of old enough, and we may put our foot down and say, that's fine. You can't impress me beyond a particular point. Very rarely we come across people who still are heavily influenced by the outside world. But there are. Political parties do take advantage of such situations. We all know that. We are vulnerable to new habits. I'm saying vulnerable because now that we are earning our own money, we're not answerable to anybody, right? So some habits are good, right? Some habits, as we all know, may not be good in the long run. Let's look at what happens 30 to 40. According to me, this is perhaps, if most of us in our respective careers, we get to hit sort of or approach the peak of our careers somewhere in this phase. For some, it may be closer to 40, plus minus between 40 50. That's different. But 35, according to me, is when you are physically probably the fittest, confidence wise you are at your high. It's about 12 13 years post your education, when you're close to say 40. You feel you have a lot of experience, you're already leading people perhaps, and you feel that there's nothing in this world that's going to stop you. You're at your confident best. So growth, responsibilities, earnings, influence you have in your society, amongst your people, all that is going to be relatively high. Own family responsibilities also continue to increase, because in most cases people are married at this point in time. And if we believe marriage is, we look at one side of marriage as only the fun part, companionship, we have somebody to talk to, we are traveling, etc., etc. That's one side of it. It comes with responsibilities, and we cannot shirk from that. I don't mean the responsibilities to be a burden or a bad thing. They are responsibilities, right? So if we accept these responsibilities in a nice manner, we accept that these are responsibilities that are going to come my way, it can turn out to be quite enjoyable, opportunity for new learnings and so on. But whatever it is, we need to be aware. Some cases, people are contemplating big career shifts. It's possible that you had a certain passion. You chose a particular career because you had to choose that. And then 35, 38, you kind of feel financially kind of okay. And that's when you're thinking about, that's fine. I think I want to go do what I've truly been passionate about. That could also happen around this time. Some are beginning to look at long-term savings, family's future, and so on. This is the point when, without us realizing, as we get older, we suddenly realize that our parents are also getting old. Sometimes we don't, and that's when it could be that they become dependents, right? So this is that phase, that 30 to 40. I've always found it very interesting. Until now we are young and we are dependent on our parents, and this is that phase when the tables can turn, when parents can become dependent on us. Now, if we anticipate and accept that, everything is smooth. But if we forget about the fact that they're also getting older as we chug along, this can come as a rude shock for many people. They don't know how to deal with it. They feel their career decisions are now based on what's happening on the home front, and that can lead to a lot of frustration, right? Especially if you have not anticipated and planned for it. I'm going to spend a few more minutes on this phase, because this is crucial. This is that phase, when most of our life changes happen, right? So for example, when we get married, right, we are learning how to understand another person who's come into our lives. This is true whether you're a male or a female, right? In both cases, we think we know the person, but it takes time. character begins to face tests. So until now, we saw how the character is getting shaped. Now the character is facing tests, and a lot of how the shaping has happened will decide on how well you pass these tests. That's kind of how it is. And people who have not been focusing much on savings, they're going to start feeling the pressure. Many years ago, job losses, layoffs, all these things were unknown, right? Most people never even planned for such things. But in today's environment, that's not the case. So we need to be, careful. A lot of times we may end up losing a job not because of our fault. It could be a bad economy. It could be that the company decided to stop its operations. It could be anything like that. So we cannot pass on the blame to anybody else. At the end of the day, we have to deal with the situation. So there is an important point here about health. Like I said, 30, 35, you can get away with a lot of bad habits. Let's say you've been sleeping late, you've been waking up early, you may be hitting the gym. All that is perfectly fine, but the body needs sleep as well. We sometimes tend to forget to eat on time. We have lunch at 4 o'clock in the late afternoon. We might decide to skip lunch. In some cases, it's just a coffee. So the body can take a beating up to some stage, but beyond 35, 40, the body reacts. And so until this stage, if we have also been paying attention to our health, we are okay. But it's not too late. Even at this stage, if those, the lower back pain or anything like that were to start showing up, we need to recognize the fact that we need to address it right now, nip it in the bud, and prevent further, challenges. Else, we may end up with a lot of money. We may end up with every single luxury that we had aspired for, but we may struggle to enjoy or reap the benefits of all that hard work. So, again, from today's context, anybody who thinks I've learned enough and I'm settled, you're asking for trouble. I would emphasize that continuous learning is also critical at this point in time. Otherwise, there is going to be pressure at work. So let's move on to 40 to 50. I'm going to go a little faster at this stage. 40 to 50, for some, it is an even better period in career, in the career front. Because let's say if you have been growing on the leadership level, then you do end up getting a lot more responsibilities and growth. Own family responsibilities, 100% they're going to increase, because this is the stage when your kids are probably approaching their teenage stages. And as we all know, and we saw 12 to 18 what goes on, right? So on the one front, we are coming back home from work and learning to deal with that set of people. And on the other side, our parents are probably in the 60 to 70 age group. And if they were already dependents, then they're going to become even more dependent, right? Depending on us is not a bad thing, because of course we depended on them, right? So it's not a big deal. We should take care of everybody, depending on. A lot of times it's not just financial dependency. Sometimes, financially they may be well off, but it's about us being available, right? So all of those things matter. Some could be struggling in their career, and character testing events increase. This is, well, like I said, one side you have your kids, the work front responsibilities, elders in the family. You are going to be under a fair amount of pressure in terms of finding the right balance at this particular stage. So that's what I mean by character testing situations increase. Long-term financial security, health, all that. That's what is happening. So if you are a kid, you are 12 to 18 and you're listening and watching this, if you have to ask your parents a couple of times for approvals on certain things and you get evasive answers, it's not because a parent is not interested to support you. It could be that there are so many other things running in the parents' minds. So this is what I meant early on, saying it's good to watch this as a family, because in that room where you're sitting right now, you could be having a representative from 3 or 4 different age groups here. And what I'm trying to say is, given a particular situation, the way such an individual is going to look at or perceive that situation, or the impact that situation has on this person, can vary based on which age group you belong to. So for some, it may be the ultimate most important thing that needs to be taken care. For some, it's like it's okay if there's a delay in taking a decision. For somebody else, it's a no-brainer. They say, what's such a big deal about that, right? And that is also something that can lead to friction, because each of these persons is looking at that same situation using a different yardstick, and giving it a different priority or a different level of importance, and that can lead to a lot of frustrating conversations. So a lot of times we forget the fact that this is the reason, right? So it helps. So empathy, that's the word I would like to use here. Empathy is good at this situation. Some exit jobs, they pursue. This is, when I talk about career shifts in the previous stage, many sometimes tend to do that here. And those with health niggles, it does affect further growth on the job and their morale as well. 50 to 60. I like this picture a lot. It shows, two people walking on the beach. And that's significant because I'm going to go straight away jump into this point, which is you may be towards the end of your career. I'm talking about most people, right? If you're in business and all that, you decide when you want to exit. And or you could already have exited a career and you are settled in a quiet role, right? It depends. Own family responsibilities are approaching their peak, because 50 to 60 is when your kids are of that, they're probably getting married, maybe getting settled in a different place. Your own parents could be extremely old, many big decisions. But hopefully 50 to 60, you have had enough exposure to not only your personal experiences, but if you have been in touch with your friends, colleagues, other family members who are experiencing different situations, if you've been supporting them, helping them, you learn from their lessons too. And all of these learnings put together make you the person that you are even in this stage, and make you either very comfortable in dealing with tough situations, taking those tough calls, or extremely nervous, jittery, maybe getting frustrated, losing your temper, whatever may be the situation. We need to be watchful about our health. We cannot assume that until now I never had a single report going against me. We can't assume some of these things, because there are situations, I know of very close friends of mine who led extremely healthy lifestyles, but unfortunate things happen to them. So I'm not saying that we need to be paranoid and afraid of such situations, but these things can happen. These things can happen to anybody, right? So it's good to watch, and do those regular checkups and so on and so forth. So we also realize that 50 to 60 is when probably we are at our peak of our active best. So if you had that desire to go to the Himalayas on a trek or climb a mountain or something like that, this is perhaps that last stage when most of us probably are fit enough or almost fit enough to embark on such journeys. If so, don't wait. Go do it. 100%. Because opportunities like this, or dreams, whatever dreams we may have had, if we don't take the steps to make them happen, right? We can't repent later and say that I wish I could have done that. I wish I could. So this is very crucial from that point of view. And some take up new causes, right? Spiritual knowledge sharing. It's important. Reason is, if we don't prepare for that stage in life when our careers are going to dim out or comes to a hard stop, if we are in government jobs, there is a retirement date, we probably would not know what to do with our spare time. And as they say, an idle mind is a devil's workshop. So we can make our own lives miserable and other people's lives miserable too, because we never figured out what we're going to do with all the time, right? So it's important that we don't wait for that day. It's nice to look at something that we're passionate about, maybe gardening, maybe a service to the society, maybe sharing knowledge, anything of that sort. It's always nice to start off that journey at this stage so that we can age gracefully. It's very important. I consider it important. Some focus on restructuring investments. I'm getting into some financials, right? We spoke about making money from that age of 22, 25, 30, and hopefully you've invested and stuff, right? And now you have assets and you probably have, you sometimes end up making a little bit more than what you might require in a long while. If so, it's good to focus on all these investments. Look at what do you want to keep, what do you want to liquidate, right? It's very important, because as we grow older, we might have situations where our signature probably is not going to be recognized by the authorities in the bank. And as you grow older, you shouldn't be sitting and worrying about, has somebody encroached my piece of land? I used to have so many acres in Ooty, I had this, I had that. Great. But we're not going to go up with all this with us. And that's a cliched statement, I know, but this is probably the right age for us to look at a little bit of a long-term thing on that and decide what is going to happen to, anything that is excess, and then take those investments. Generally, it's good to simplify. I'm not just preaching here. This is exact conversation I had with my parents when they were in this age group. And the result was, the one house that they owned, they sold. They put whatever money came into deposits. But the thing is, they had some liquid cash with them and hard-earned money, right? Until then, they'd spent their entire life's earnings taking care of us children, our education, and so on. And I think they sacrificed a lot of trips, a lot of their spare time to make sure that we got a good upbringing. So this was their time to enjoy. So I was very happy when they listened to that. They sold the property, right? And they had no assets in their name beyond the age of 60, 65. And they enjoyed a good life. My dad, in fact, I remember, he didn't inform any of us, but he went for driving lessons. Till then, he had not even driven a car. He never owned a car, right? He went for driving lessons, got a driver's license, and then one day said, "Can you help me buy a car?" And here I was, my brother was there, and we owned cars, and we were all living together. But then we respected his wishes, and we in fact went with him. He bought a used car, and he and mom used that car for 3-4 years, after which he said, "I think I've had my desire fulfilled. I'm ready to sell the car now." But he's 84. I think last year he was again reminding me, saying that his license is expired. He wants to just renew it. So, but I think overall they've been happy. Mom is no more, but I think he's happy because he doesn't worry about a lot of things that he cannot possibly control without depending on somebody else. That's the point here. 60 to 70, we're coming towards the end of the presentation. Last leg of the career for a lot, especially people in business, at least at this stage, if people are not handing over things to somebody else, there has to be one solid reason for you to still hang on to that. So you could be in an advisory role, right? That's a great role to be in. You've learned a lot, and these are nice ways of us using the accumulated knowledge to help others in their journeys. Own family responsibilities start to decrease here, hopefully, because by then your kids are settled. They are beginning their own life's journeys. They are in that 30 to 40, 40 to 50, which means hopefully your life is getting simplified. It should be like that. We are more watchful about our health, what we eat, and so on. And character does get tested to the highest level, 60 to 70, in a number of situations, because again, if your kids have grown up into becoming mature adults, you're okay. But if they have not, right, and you are sitting with a lot of assets, then you know what's going to happen, right? There's going to be a lot of infighting and other issues there. And again, it's your strength of character, how do you manage those situations, and so on and so forth. Health also plays a role, right? If you've had those niggles which have carried forth, you again sometimes have to deal with a lot of tough situations. But in general, if you have been taking care of a number of things, you do okay. Thinking of enjoying life with less physical exhaustion. 60 to 70, obviously, you're getting older. So I know a number of cases where a lot of my age group folks are settled in other countries. Until this age, their parents did not mind getting onto the plane and traveling few thousand miles to go and visit and spend time with their kids. But past 60 is when they start saying that enough is enough. When you get time, you come to me, right? They probably don't enjoy that journey a lot. And state of mind of people and their morale, a lot depends on what life has thrown at them up to this stage. If things have been fine, they are in good state of mind. Generally, financial security also plays a role, but you can have situations where they are financially well off but not satisfied in life. So it all depends on. 70 to 80 typically is a totally retired life. Own family responsibilities tend to be very low for most people. But you could be ending up managing your kids' investments and stuff. I know a number of people who are doing that. And I'm not so sure, because if on the one front, I'm saying that, past 60, we need to look at simplifying our life by restructuring our own investments. And here I am, past 70, 75, taking care of my son's investments or his property while he's somewhere else. That's a headache. I might be okay with 1 or 2 years of doing it, but beyond that, I can tell you it's going to be a headache. In fact, my son is behind the camera as we record, so he's getting the message straight from me. But then that's not the first time he's getting to hear me say this. So that's how it is. So state of mind, like in the previous situation, a lot depends on the life experiences at this point in time. So that's kind of the view of how this journey might look like for most of us through my eyes. You could argue with me and say that some of the points which I've made in certain phases could happen sooner for some, or could happen later for some. And I would say, yeah, you're right. Because situations can change. So for example, if I give you the example of, say, Azim Premji, who is, everybody knows who Azim Premji is of Wipro. At the age of 21, I don't know him personally, but I've kind of read about him and I've spoken to people who work with him. At the age of 21, when he was doing his engineering, so that means he's in the 18 to 22 bracket, typically when people are focusing on higher studies. There was a life-changing event for him, his father's passing away. He took the decision to come back to India to take control of the family business. And if I'm not mistaken, it was close to the age of 50 or so when he decided to go back and finish that engineering degree. But that's probably more for his personal satisfaction. But in his case, many things would have shifted left, right? Taking care of that family business, coming to terms with dealing with these tough situations, everything shifts left. So then the learnings happen sooner. Now, in his case, he chose to do that. In some other situations, I know of people where similar life-changing events happened. Instead of taking on responsibilities, they continue to lean on their mothers. And I doubt in some cases they achieved or attained that level of maturity to take ownership, even past the age of 60. So we can have exceptions in both cases. So with that, let's look at the last picture that I want to show you. This should give you the overall big picture perspective as to why it might be beneficial to us if we were to look at the longer term and understand. So I'm just throwing 3 or 4 parameters to first look at. One is, if I look at the line which symbolizes learning. As you can see, 4 to 30 is roughly the time when we are all licensed to learn. What I mean by that is, if we are caught learning, nobody is going to ask us, why are you learning? Why aren't you doing something else? Whereas beyond the age of 30, if I'm going to say that I'm studying something, people are going to say, oh, wow. And if I'm studying at the cost of earning, people are going to ask us, what about opportunity cost? Hey, are you sure you want to do this MBA program costing you so many lakhs of rupees, as opposed to if you had to continue the work, you'd have also gained an experience and the on-the-job learning, etc., etc. A lot of justification, not only to others, to ourselves, right? Even otherwise, finding time to do learning as well as other things, it's going to be a challenge. I have been teaching the guitar for the last 11 or 12 years. I was also running a retail store until recently. And I can tell you, parents come in to buy guitars for their kids. And then on the side, they tell us, I too had nurtured aspirations to, wanted to learn, but then I got busy with my job. I don't know when I will get time, but I am still very much interested. And I do tell them that, that time is not going to come back. So you have to make the time for it. Right? While I'm saying the time is not going to come back, I'm only partially right. The time does come back, which is when you are past your 60 or 70, when your own responsibilities decrease. Look at this active earning phase. That's another critical point for us, right? 22, 23 to 55 is typically when you are in an active earning phase. So what I mean by that is, you work and you earn. You get through salary or business income or other means, right? Beyond 55, 60, in most cases, it is only passive earnings. What do I mean by that? It's if you made your investments, interest from those investments, or if you invested in an additional house, then you're getting rent from that. That's what I mean by passive investment. That passive earning, if it is enough, along with whatever you saved up in your active phase, if that is enough to carry through till the end of your life, not only for yourself, your spouse, your kids as well, and anybody else who's dependent on you, then you're okay. But we need to remember that active earning is not forever. We need to keep that in mind. There are big spends. Typically that phase 30 plus, when we decide to buy our own house, or we got to pay those EMIs, there will be travels, kids, education, and so on. Then there's another bigger bubble when the kids come of age for their higher education. And then there's the third bubble, which is when we are, going through 55 to 60 and above. It is our own personal, needs, health, and so on and so forth. So we need to be aware of how that spending is. Unfortunately, whether the earning is there or not, the spending usually cannot be avoided, which is when we end up taking large loans. So keep that in mind. Lastly, let's look at time on hand. Up to the age of 18, as you can see, there is time on hand. And then we go through such a busy phase from 18. Here in this case, it's not even from 22, from 18, because we are, a lot of expectations on the academics front, right? So 18 up to 60, busy. And beyond 60, in a lot of cases, we do have time on hand. We can use that time productively. This is what I meant about making sure that we have some hobbies, some interests that we are developing much before, so that our retired stage, we don't go mad and we don't, get others to lose their minds because of us. Last but not the least, sometimes we are born into families where without doing anything, we end up inheriting a lot of property and a lot of money. At that point in time, we can say, I can't help it. The money came. But we can either take it easy or use it as a foundation to build something meaningful on top of that. See, having a lot of money is not a bad thing. That's not my point here. It is about how well we use. So let's me look at money itself as a resource. A resource can be money, a resource can be skill, a resource can be a particular talent, a resource could be a large network. Having more than what we need is not a bad thing. It's how we utilize this resource. That's where I think a lot of difference can be made, right? For the good or for the latter. So with that, I conclude this session. I hope the 1 hour or so was worth it. Please do write to me. As I said early on, this is, if not for anything, if this helps people to understand and accept that, hey, this is something I need to sit back and think about, I would say I'm pretty satisfied that it achieved its objectives. So with that, I wish everybody all the very best. I have nurtured thoughts of coming out, with a book on this very topic, with a lot more anecdotes from real life situations and so on and so forth. I hope to probably, get on with that goal and accomplish that goal in the coming months, hopefully sometime in 2021. Wishing all of you an extremely, extremely happy New Year, and more power to all of you. Thank you.